Hello my friends and welcome to FISHTORY. I'm Alexander Williamson and today I am so excited to be talking to you guys about the smallest fish in the hobby. So today we're going to be talking about some of the most amazing fish you can keep, some of the most beautiful fish you can keep, and you can keep them in a very small little container. So I'm really excited to talk about these fish, how they evolved, where they evolved, some of the really interesting traits like the fact that they can sing and make noise, which I had no idea about, and I've kept them for a decade. And some of the really interesting evolutionary quirks about them, some of the dangers that their habitat is facing, and also how to care for them, how to breed them. So hopefully we'll cover just about everything you want to know about the Microboraris, or the little chili rasboras, the Sundadanios axelrodi, which are also known as the blue neon danios. And we're going to look at those in particular as kind of the prototypical nano fish for a true nanofish, something that is under an inch long and can live in a very small container, in a blackwater container or in a filterless container even. So let's jump in, let's talk all about it. I'm really excited. Alright guys, so we're going to start our journey of the world's smallest pet fish here. Now there are a number of fish that compete for that very teeny tiniest title, but for a practical fish, half an inch to an inch long, that's in the hobby, that's a beautiful color, you start to see really this fish as one of the smallest. These, chili rasboras, and so forth. Now these are called neon blue or neon green rasboras oftentimes. However, their Latin name is the Sundadanios axelrodi, named after Herbert Axelrod, a mogul in the aquarium hobby world and owner of Tropical Fish Hobbyist magazine, a number of other things. However, they were assumed to be rasboras when they were first found because they look a lot like lamb chop rasboras and other fish, but they're just even smaller. They do turn out to be cyprinidae fish, which are all related. So you've got your chili rasboras and your danios, all the way up to big fish like carp. So let's take a look in a moment, and we'll compare where these ended up evolutionarily. But it turns out that they're actually closer to danios and danionellas. Alright, so moving on to the family tree of these small Southeast Asian cyprinids. At the top you can see we've got our beautiful in purple there, the Sundadanios axelrodi, these little blue neon rasboras as they're sometimes called. But when we try to look at their common ancestors, what's right below them, which is one common ancestor apart, so they split off into two species at some point, maybe 2-3 million years ago, is the Danionellas. Now, Danionellas are actually the true smallest fish in the world. They actually don't have a brain plate or brain casing, any sort of skull on the top of their head, and we can look straight through the tissue, the soft tissue, and see their brain. So they're actually used for research modeling and so forth, and a number of other scientific uses, but they're extremely small, and they're what we call pedomorphic fish, which means they kept the traits that baby fish had in the common ancestor previously. So they actually have like bigger eyes, and things aren't proportionally correct to what most fish have as adults. They're like a baby fish, or like fry would have. Whereas the true Microrasboras and Sundadanios and some of these other small fish like chili rasboras are not pedomorphic. They are just true microfish that are scaled down versions of the adults, which is really cool in my opinion, and I tend to like those more. They're a lot more relatable, and they look more familiar to what we think of as a fish. So let's take a look down here and see how far away you actually have to go down this list before you get to a Rasbora, as this was originally named. Originally, when they were found in the 70s, they thought, okay, they're a Rasbora because they look like some of the mainland creatures that are known in the Rasbora family. Well, it turns out that actually there's all these Danios that are more closely related, including the lake inlay Danio and the erythromicron Danio, or the emerald dwarf Rasbora, which again is not a Rasbora, but those are more closely related. The celestial pearl Danio, more closely related than all the other Rasboras. If you look and see how many common ancestors on this chart it was apart. So geography hasn't necessarily dictated what's related to what or who's related to who over time. Rather, it has been probably environmental factors and different things like ice ages and so forth that has done that. Alright, now let's address the elephant in the room. This big yellow dotted line that I have on the map called the Wallace Line. Now, a 19th century naturalist by the name of Alfred Wallace, a British fella, discovered that the animals of continental Asia all stuck to one side of this line, and all the animals of Australia, all the mammals and big fauna, they stayed separate, and there was this transitional zone. In some cases, like in between Bali and the next island over, only 22 miles separated the two different realms of Asiatic versus Micronesian or Australian creatures. But this is true for fish also, like rainbow fish and things just don't occur north of the Wallace Line as a general rule. And the Rasboras and the Danios also stay north of that line for the most part. However, there are some of the Rasboras that you saw all the way down at the bottom of that chart, and they occur in Papua New Guinea as well. So it's kind of interesting to see what has shifted and moved and where things were, because it was never all connected completely. There's always been some sort of a water barrier there for as long as we can sort out, even though it was far closer at one point. Now, these islands are also fascinating because each one is a microcosm of an old chunk of land, as you saw on the map, where you could see the old land mass when the water level was much lower. Well, because of this, now it has broken up a once contiguous zone of lakes and rivers into basically little islands, and they sometimes have fresh water on them still. So you'll see the Sundadanios axelrodi occurring on several of these islands as shown here, and you'll actually see the beautiful color differences that have developed because of that distance. So distance isn't always what determines how different these little creatures are, or creatures in general, but in the Sundadanio axelrodi species, there's actually more difference in phenotype, or the way the creatures look, within the island of Borneo and the different micro ecosystems that exist there than there are across the island chain, which is kind of fascinating. So on the island of Borneo, there's actually several collection points that have completely different looking fish that are all the same species. They're just different colors and sometimes even have a little bit different finnage. But you can see there's beautiful red varieties, blue varieties, a much greener variety, translucent types, and even in the north of the island, there is a kind that they call a singing Rasbora, which, again, closer to a Danio, but the name was from the 70s, and they actually have a little extra membrane in their throat, kind of by their gills, that they think they stretch tight and basically vibrate and or strike with their pectoral fin muscle, and it makes a little chirping or buzzing noise, kind of like the croaking gouramis do. So that's kind of fascinating that that's all within the same species and all within this island. So the environment is what we need to talk about next, because this is how also you're going to want to keep these fishes in what models their wild habitat, and that is mostly peat bogs and rainforest water that is super tannic, full of lots of fallen leaves and wood, low in oxygen, generally speaking. But sometimes they do live in flowing water that does have a little more oxygen. So they're happily kept in neutral water tanks. If you have clear, clean water, just don't keep it alkaline or hard. So you want a low TDS ideally. And that's going to be ideal also for spawning them. Now, you also want little microscopic life forms, be that Daphnia or Paramecium, but something for them to actually eat, because in these ponds and puddles that they grew up in, they evolved to eat the very smallest of little creatures, and the babies are going to hatch when the adults notice that there is food around for them to eat. So it helps to signal the adults it's ready and time for them to have babies when there is food around that's even smaller than the food the adults normally eat. Now, also, the pH is going to need to be below 6.0 for them to spawn in most cases, and ideally around 5.0 pH is even better. And the babies are minuscule, and they hatch in the leaf matter and in the peat moss of these ancient rainforests. So they live in these ancient forests that are full of ancient towering trees and millennia of falling vegetative matter and botanicals, leaves and things, which eventually turn into this thick layer that's sometimes hundreds of feet thick in the forests of peat moss. And the water is generally sitting on top of those deposits of peat moss and mulm and soil. And there's all sorts of little creatures, from single-cell organisms to worms to microcrustaceans and insects living in there. But the babies are less than an eyelash in their size. So if you look at your eyelash, they are about that big around and everything. So they need very tiny food. And the parents also see that as a sign to reproduce. Now, they are used to these dim areas, and the adults will look much more colorful, actually, if you have dim light on them. They have a reflective scale color on them that shimmers much prettier in a dim light than in a bright light. Also, they are used to very hot temperatures in these jungles, sweltering 86-degree water, and when the rainy season starts, that's when they generally spawn. The temperature generally drops to something like 76 to 80 degrees in the water, and the TDS drops even more from the rainfall. So you can use these tricks to kind of mimic their natural cycles. And lastly, I would say if you're trying to spawn them, that you need to have a very, very well-seasoned tank, clearly, to have all these little tiny crustaceans and creatures, because they live in such a unique habitat. And this is why in captivity they also are known to really like to eat live food, very small live food, baby brine shrimp and things like that. And they will eat some sorts of flake food, things like fluval bug bites crumpled up, or maybe some sorts of fry food out on the market as they drift to the bottom. But they usually won't eat much once it's hit the bottom. So just keep that in mind. Now, speaking of the beautiful place that they come from, it is completely unique in the world, the islands that it comes from. Indonesia and Borneo are two incredible places that are currently being ravaged right now, both by the palm oil industry and by almost 50 years of logging and being exported. All the old ancient trees, the old growth rainforest being exported to China and mainland Asia mostly. Beyond this, there's also all sorts of tribal groups and ethnic groups that are not getting along, specifically in Borneo, as well as Papua New Guinea and other areas that these small fish are from. And there is a lot of illicit trade funding militias and different groups through the narco states and through other means such as poaching and black market economies. Unfortunately, very tied into logging and palm oil plantations, which will continue to be a threat for all of these fish for the foreseeable future. If something is not done soon, it is very likely that they will cease to exist in the wild within the next 20 years. Which are all reasons why, if you're deciding to keep these fish and other nanofish, the true nanofish, the beautiful little jewels that they are, tell your friends, tell your family, post about these fish, keep them in the best version of their natural habitat possible. And if you can, try to spawn them, try to have more of these fish so that one day we can serve as a sort of Noah's Ark of these species, as we're doing right now with goodeids and other fish around the world that have gone extinct in the wild. To keep them at their happiest and healthiest, you're going to want a dozen to even 24 of these. And again, dim lights and live food is ideal. But hopefully with all this, we can save this species and have a beautiful pet. You guys made it to the end. Thank you so much. It means so much to me when you guys watch all the way through. So if you stuck around, I hope that means you liked it. You want to give it a thumbs up. That really does help the video, and it makes all the time and research I put into these videos worthwhile. Also, if you want to become a member and help curate and create the stuff that's happening on this channel and have you know, an opinion and input, you know, I try to listen to the audience, but if you want to have that much little extra oomph on your opinion, as well as getting access to an extra 200 episodes of the audio format secret show, which is also being released slowly as a podcast, but it's all up right now for members. That's only $1.99, so I try to keep it as affordable as possible, and that way I can keep doing this full time. Thank you guys for watching so much. That's my pitch, and I will see you guys next time. Have a great day and take care.